right, everybody. It is a new patch, a new tier list, everyone's favorite highly marketable form of content. Last time we had Strat Game and Blood Penguin on the video. People seem to like that, but I don't want to listen to any more bad takes, so I had to find two completely different people, and I found world famous kick streamer Boojalicious, often hosting cap point tournaments every week. Booj, say hi to the people so they can put a name to a voice thing.
I dabble. I skipped it this week. I'm sorry, but we'll resume next week. Pretty sure.
Yar. And then there is LeNorm. You sometimes see them on my stream. A lot of their replays get cast. Superb fairy run. Plays a lot of Zinch, admin on my Discord, and quite high level tournament player. Though his time zone is not super great for him to be in a lot of tournaments. LeNorm, say hi to the peoples.
Hey, people.
Lovely.
Sorry
And
if you can hear me tip typing.
no, I didn't hear anything. Yeah, we're just going to go through each faction. We're going to try and keep this nice and short, not be here all day. I do ask that if you're going to post a nasty comment on this video, at least listen to the reasoning of why faction you care about is placed where it is. Don't just skip to the end and go, what's that Empire in B tier? And then list the exact reasons we put them in B tier, but then pretend it's S. That's not constructive. All right, let's get into it, starting off with the Beastmen. This is actually currently a discussion in our admin chat to figure out if they're on the global ban list. I personally put them at B. I think they're a really solid faction with defined weaknesses but defined strengths. I think they're well balanced even though they are good. Booj, how do you feel about B?
B. Um, I like B. I like maybe high B. But I think a case can be made for A. I think Zangors on their roster specifically are still really strong. Their mobility elements still very strong. You can't count out the double Gorgon Jabber yet. Um, and all of the magic they have access to right now, it's decent. You can bring your Buna, you can bring your Malkoths, you can nuke their characters down with Traderkin. So I would the more I talk about it, I think I'm comfortable putting them in low A, bottom of A.
All right. Lenore, we got bottom of A. I put them solidly in B. How are we feeling?
I'm happy with either. This is a kind of important differentiation if it's going to be reflected in the VL tier list, because if they're in A, they'll be globally bannable, and if they're in B, they won't. It seems funny globally banning Beastmen when you can globally ban Cafe, but anyway. They're strong, they've got good cost-effective infantry, good mobility, and very strong single entities. They kind of tick all the boxes in that way, but they also have a big weakness in like defensive spear boxes or cafe boxes. They find really hard to break through, which makes me think they'll be in B because most of the factions that I would put above them are stronger than them and good into them, but they're good against almost everything I'd put below them.
All
But
right.
that will be reflected in the last list, I guess.
For now, I will leave them at the very tippy top of B, but as we're making this list, if it's like, well, this is worse than Beastman, this is worse than Beastman, then we might have to move them. But yeah, they're right
Yeah,
there.
Empire will be a good comparison because to me they're very similarly strong factions. They don't have the same strengths and weaknesses, but they seem the same power level to me.
Grand Cathay, this could be nice and short. Lenorm, you want to tell the people why it's S tier?
I mean, they've got good range, the like most cost effective infantry in the game, bar none. They can their lords and heroes are strong. They've got decent mobility these days, and Croman are still one of the best units in the game. I think there's no reason not to put them in S tier. They tick every box. Indeed, their box is so strong it doesn't really need ticking.
Dude, I didn't think Roman were that bad until they dove a Warp Lightning Cannon defended by Skaven Slaves and Rat Ogres. They killed the Warp Lightning Cannon and left without a problem. They had like 3/4 of their HP still. I was like, what? Okay, what the fuck? You can't just do that.
Yeah, they're like the unit Furies or Harpies want to be, but yeah, they're just a great.
Boo, did we miss anything?
No, I would say agree completely. The harmony nerfs, if you even want to call them that, were negligible, and I would say the same for the Chroma nerfs. And even if they're limit 2 in Vermin League, like, I mean, the stats are so juiced, you're never not gonna bring 2 every time, just to keep that box protected, give the harmony and all that good stuff. So
Yeah, I played against someone who only bought one, and I thought they had two. That one unit did so much.
They're very, very tough to deal with. All right, Booj, I think out of the three of us, you play the most Chaos Dwarves, right?
I don't know where you got that information from. I did just play a game of Chaos Dwarves before the stream started, and I won.
All right.
So, I think I'm qualified.
Where do you put them?
Um, high C, high C fruit punch. I think the infantry nerfs were good. Having a wider front line is definitely a help when you've got important shooting elements to protect. The Death Streak buffs were also good. But I don't feel like that really helped fill in the gaps in a lot of the factions' weaknesses. I think they're headed on the right track, but they might just need a little more. The trains are weird. They're kind of carrying the faction, especially the ROR. But like, you have to have them because the rest of the roster is a very, very mixed bag at the moment.
I feel like I associated you with Chaos Dwarves because I remember a very early replay of them where you brought triple Infernal Ironsworn and you were against some Beastmen. I think it was Umbrella's Beastmen.
Yeah, I mean Umbrella.
And he killed everything in your army in the first minute, and then I had to watch 3 Infernal Ironsworn just grind his army to dust over the next 15, and I'm like, all right, that's burned into my brain.
Happy to have done that for you.
I think I cast that game.
Oh, you did.
I mean, it was good content. It's, hey, those Infernal Ironsworn are pretty good. All right. See, I've been playing some of them. It definitely is a counter pick faction. First picking it, you're just in so much trouble. They have no flank control at all. Like, their Hobgoblin Wolfriders are too bad. Bull Centaur Renders are too expensive. So there's no middle ground. People can either swarm past you or just out elite you. I don't know. They're, like you said, they're just a roster with a lot of holes and very few strengths, so you kind of know what's coming at you. So I think C is fair because they do have strengths. I will say that it's just obvious what they are.
Thing I will say is every time I play against Hard Russ quite often, and he brings them and plays them quite differently with 4 skirmish cav and like vaguely obeying the attacking rule kind of playstyle that was so common in Warhammer 2, and it was really hard to deal with, and all my normal builds that I'd expect for Chorfs didn't seem to be working very well there. That's not saying it should be higher, but it's saying I do have this thought in the back of my mind. Is there another way of playing them that no one's quite worked out yet because no one's really thought it worth the time or effort? But I think they seem C tier to me.
All right. They do seem C tier or they see above C tier?
No, they seem C tier to me, but I could imagine someone one day like comes up with a build that works in every matchup and all of a sudden they're A tier. But no one's found it yet. They just seem like slightly underexplored to me. But that might just be because I haven't explored them very much.
Alright. Fair enough. Bretonia, strat game is getting to me. Last tier list, I was pretty adamant on them in A. And
is it strat game or regrowth that's getting to you?
Okay, like regrowth, but Strat was trying to warn me and I wouldn't listen.
Yeah.
Kislev, Zinch, and Cathay were so sexy and shiny and new S tier. But after 2 of those factions got nerfed, I'm like, holy crap, Bretonia's strong! Oh, God! So I'm putting them at S tier. I can't deal with that faction right now. They're so strong. LeNorm, tell me I'm crazy.
No. You were crazy. You've kind of finally found some sanity. No, they're definitely S tier, and I think played properly, I think they're better than Cafe. I find them harder to play against. If someone can heal cap 3 Grail Knights, then it's just a nightmare. Like you sit there and you can't kill them. But Cafe are definitely easier. Like you just sit there and watch your opponent's army bounce off yours. But Brett seems stronger to me.
Yeah. While Brett is harder than Cathay, I'd say their current iteration is the easiest they've ever been to play. Bretonnia is usually kind of thought of as a high skill faction, which they used to be, but like right now, you seriously have to micro like 3 units, and then you're good.
You're right.
Booj, rebuttal, you're good.
I was prepared to call you crazy for putting them below Cathay, but you have since rectified that, so I think we can just move on.
I briefly forgot that I should put the strongest of each thing to the left.
Yeah.
All right, Dark Elves. I don't even know which of us plays Dark Elves. Do any of us?
I kind of did, yeah, when IE started.
Yeah, they were my second faction in Warhammer 2. In Warhammer 3, I just got a bit bored of them.
All right.
So yeah, I play them, I bring them out every now and again, but they're just not exciting to me.
Well, by default, it's Booj's problem. Booj, Dark Elves, where are they? What are we doing?
I mean, yeah, same kind of deal with LeNorm. They're still super solid, but they're just like, I don't know, they're so to play sometimes because like you know what you're bringing, you know what you're getting. It's like which elves? Oh yeah, those are all very good. Coldwind Knights. Oh yeah, those are all very good. Soul Stealer nerfs, I think were nice. I don't think it knocked them down a tier by any means. I'd still have them comfortably in A.
Yeah.
Because Soul Stealer, it still does have the advantage of being damage like. So I'm gonna go on a bit of a tangent here with like the 3 strongest heals in the game. Obviously, Regrowth at number 1 because it also does Vigor, and that is just huge in a late game situation. Like Fleshy has its own merits too because you can cast that in an AOE, and then of course you have Soul Stealer, where you can dish out damage while healing back up. So like it still has a place on the roster. Like, okay, healing is slightly toned down, but you could also take Malice and just have 2 health bars and a guaranteed heal cap Lord.
I got rocked by Malice today.
Exactly. Like the roster is just so well rounded to have basically every tool for every job. You got anti-large, you got AP, you got chaff that can hold their own. Like you got all the magics you could want. You got good lords. Like I think it's A tier, and it's not even a question really.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I left some space above and below them in A tier just because I don't feel like they're at the top of A, but I think you're right that they're not close to falling out of it. LeNorm?
Yep, A tier. I think they're where a strong faction should be. I think Cafe and Brett are kind of not fun, but Dark Elves are like this would be a balanced multiplayer game if they were the best faction.
All right. That's the closest thing to a dwarf player we're gonna have here. This is I'm probably gonna get disagreed with, but I personally think the dwarves are B. I think if your opponent doesn't know what they're doing at all, dwarves are an A tier faction. But I feel like if your opponent knows how to counter dwarves, especially in a patch where chariots are all of a sudden working a lot better, dwarven boxes are just predictable because they don't have any other really way to play the game. So I don't know, but like even knowing exactly what they're going to bring, I still put them in B tier because they are very strong at that thing. I have a hard time putting them in A, but I know a lot of people disagree with me on that. So, LeNorm, what are any rebuttals?
Whatever tier they're in, they're not a faction I love. I'd put them in on at the very bottom of A tier because I think globally banning them is a good thing for the Vermin League. But I could see them being B tier. It's a bit like Cafe, right? If everyone was brilliant, then they'd probably be B tier. But with our kind of mediocrity, then they push into the very bottom of A tier for me.
Booj, how do you feel?
Yeah,
we got B, we got A.
Yeah, you're outnumbered on this one, hubby. I had him in a last patch, and then other than the Rune of Doom nerf, like what changed. Like Thorek still got his perfect vigor, ITP. Two Thanes are still really fucking strong, and they only cost 500. Like Dwarf Warriors, always just an old reliable. Like, and you got your gyros and your Bugman's Rangers. Like, I mean, yeah, like the Root of Doom Nurse was not enough to knock him down
Do
at all.
we?
And it's like just putting it in a 55-meter radius is just going to encourage the box.
That is true. Yeah, I know Gotrek Starbreaker was like, well, all right, time for my blobs to shine even harder. Do we all agree they're below Dark Elves in A?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
They
Bottom
have
of A,
more
like
bad
Norm
matches.
said.
Okay, so I'll leave some good space there. All right, Norm can start this next one, unless Booge, are you an Empire player?
I like him. I don't know if I'd consider myself a player.
Well, Greenskins is next, and I definitely will start with you for that one. So, Norm, take it away. Empire.
I would put Empire in B tier. I think they are like Beastmen. They're good. They have a couple of weaknesses, and if so, war wagons feel better these days. Which and they were an A tier before, but they had quite a low win rate, if I remember rightly. And they just seem like they lack that oomph without a unit that can really like they can build around. So for me, they're a faction in B tier. Their lords are fine. Their cav is strong. Empire Knights are great value now. They're quicker than they were in Warhammer 2. But overall, B tier seems right to me.
I would agree. I also think Beastmen are above them because Beastmen have a lot of the same stuff you were talking about as the Empire, but they have the double Gorgon Jabber that you always have to be scared of. Empire doesn't have that, like, oh, but what about this crazy build that's totally different than what they normally bring? It's like, oh, you brought Demigryph Knights instead of Empire Knights. I still have something to deal with heavy cav, so I'll just shoot at the Demigryph Knights now. Um,
Until double steam tank becomes a thing. But I guess
yeah.
Luminarks right now are pretty not fun, but they're not that strong. And again, you should be able to deal with a Luminark if you can deal with a good Empire build.
Yeah, but like double Gorgon Jabber is just so fundamentally different than like standard Beastmen that you have to have something for it, but then that's making you less prepared for like a wide Minotaur Centaur rush. So I think that gives Beastmen a little oomph over Empire, but not crazy much. I still put them both in B.
I'd say Empire are easier to play against, and Beastmen are easier to play, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I think I got that the right way around.
yeah. I don't feel Beastmen particularly hard to pick up. They're fun.
Yeah, I between the two, I'd probably encourage like a newer player to definitely gravitate more towards the Beastmen. Um, and yeah, I'm fine with Empire where they're at right now. Like the wagons are fine; they can actually like get hit. I wouldn't consider that like, I mean, it is a nerf, but it's like that's just how they were supposed to be. Um, and other than that, like they weren't really touched. So I think they're fine staying where they're at.
Fair.
And I'll say, for me, all four of the factions we have in S and A right now are good into Empire, whereas I think Beastmen can deal with a couple of them at least,
Yeah, for sure.
maybe even three actually.
All right, Bouge, take it away. Dewa, Wurzag got gutted. Where are they?
It's me. I don't know when I became the resident Greenskins main.
I don't think
But
that many of us have played them, but
yeah. Um, Truth be told, I think I played them like one time post patch, and I didn't have Warzag. Um, but unlike most of the other nerfs that we've seen, I think the Bonewood staff was substantial enough to maybe knock him down a peg. I don't remember what tier you had him in the last patch, but I think I'd have him towards bottom of B right now. I think there's a bit more exploring to do. Like maybe we could see some crazy Doom Diver builds with the homing buffs.
okay.
Um,
To defend my
but
honor, where the Booge Greenskin main comes from is the patch dropped. The first replay in my folder is the return of Gromskins with my buddy Coops. That was the first replay I got post patch. Like, this boy was excited.
we were we were just playing around, having a laugh, testing new things. But hey, maybe Grom does come back. Maybe this is a portent of something. Um, Long story short, bottom of B, like the The Borkav will still do well if you cast Fist of Gork or Here We Go on them. You're just not going to have that big push from the rest of like the Goblin and Squig frontline. Like, it's still one of the most cost-effective combinations in the whole game. I mean, you got what 300 gold shielded chaff infantry backed up by 350 like cheap AP. Like, it's pretty solid. They're just not going to be able to chew through everything like they used to with that absurd plus 12 melee attack. Um, but the front line wasn't really winning games for them before. It was still the mobility presence, like trolls are still pretty good. So yeah, low B seems fun.
My post-patch thoughts was I thought reading the patch, I thought they'd be D tier. I thought they were just dead, and then playing them after the patch, I'm like, oh, these are actually fine. Foot as Hag's been doing well for me, so yeah, they actually seem like very middle of the pack.
Hmm.
Norm.
Yeah, sorry, I need to just get an apple. I think so. After the patch, I was really excited to try out Black Orcs and Big Uns, and the changes to them just felt irrelevant. The Black Orcs just have such bad stats for the cost. Maybe I'll be proved wrong. So yeah, I'd have them bottom of B, top of C. That's where I would have put them.
All right. Are they better than Chaos Dwarves?
Yes.
All right, then we'll keep them out of C for now. For now, Chaos Dwarves, you might get bumped down into C as we go on. Lizard Men, the conversation between S and A. I'll go for it. After watching a lot of high level tournament play, I'm actually getting convinced that Lizardmen are bottom of S. Wherever S ends is where Lizardmen are. Because the new Slans put out crazy damage. And then you still have the Life Slan if you really wanted to heal Degen. And I've seen a lot of builds that don't take any healing and like kite you. And then there's the Dread Saurian Blob. These guys can do a little bit of everything. Now I do mean bottom of S. I think Bretonnia is better. I think Cathay is better. I'm not going crazy, but I do think they're above A. I think they're S is the tier that I say is a bit of a problem. I think Lizardmen are a bit of a problem. They're a fun problem, but I think if this problem lasts more than a month, people are going to get real sick of these fucks.
Are they a problem because they're in a like stable place and people can't deal with it? Or are they a problem because people haven't quite worked out how to deal with them with all the new laws of magic?
I'm not sure. I think it's just Slans. Slans bring a lot to the table. And if you can now bring damage Slans besides just fire, I'm like, oh crap. I don't know.
Yeah, like I was chatting with Blood Penguin on Sunday after I got my ass beat by Lizardmen. I'm like, oh yeah, look out! It's another faction that can just Buna Chaos Knights and they're gone. Plus the Blood Statuette of Spite, like that's just like think of any unit and it's just deleted with that combo right there. Like Feral Cold ones are still super good, but yeah, it's mostly those new lores. It's just I think too much to prepare for. Um, and I think we're just gonna see more crazy tech come out as this patch goes on. Like, I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for someone with better micro than me to submit the Plague of Rust like skink skirmisher tech. So let's make it happen.
12 range, yeah. 12 range and Plague of Rust will be really, really hard to deal with for armies that don't bring like mass armor. If you have like 3 or 4 armored units, you can just delete them one by one.
Yeah, like skink skirmisher is already annoying in general. Like, you don't really want to shoot back at them. You can blast spells at them or run them down with Cav. You run them down with Cav, it still takes a while to get there because they're getting poisoned, and then they can just send 450 gold feral cold ones in who may not win the fight, but like they're gonna punch into whatever because it's just super cheap AP. And
Yeah.
then you have your skinks and maybe you got Croxagores or you got Sores backing all of that up. It's so much to work through on top of like what does the slam have?
Yeah. And I will reiterate just before the hateful comments come in, I did say it's exciting for now. I think we'll get tired of it, but for now, I am having a good time seeing all the creativity with Lizardmen. They're very fun to watch. But Malekith and Imrik coming back into the meta was also fun for a bit. It's like, all right, do the nerfs come in before the novelty wears off? And how hard are the nerfs? You don't want a Slanesh faction, right? You don't want to just murder them, but like I think lizardmen need to cool down a little bit. So bottom of S for me. It seems like we agree. All right. Booge claims to never play any faction ever, but do you play Tomb Kings?
I do actually. Tomb Kings was the reason I built my PC and bought Warhammer 2 back in the day.
All right.
I saw those bony boys. I'm like, man, they look cool. Um, and yeah, even on Sunday, I did like 3 games on Tomb Kings in that tournament. That was the run. It was just Tomb Kings
So where are
for a
they?
long time. Tomb Kings, I would put in like middle of B. They're a solid counterpick faction. I think they do have some punch into the scary stuff right now. Like this time it's Brett, before it was ogres. Um, Great bows, always reliable. You get a nice cheap chaffy front line that's unbreakable. It gets heals. Lorna Car isn't the greatest, but you can take Arcan if you want. You can cancel the enemy spells, which is a nice big help with Kotep. Um, but I'm hesitant to put them any higher because a lot of the big cool constructs that people would want to use still aren't performing like they should in Ultra. So like we're not seeing any Hyro Titans. We barely see Necro Sphinxes. Bone Giants do alright every now and then. And like, you still got your melee Shopti, but it's I think it's really like the Stalkers and the Great Bows right now that are doing it for me.
Uh, I don't really have any rebuttals. Tomb Kings are very solidly middle. I feel like they're very easy to deal with when I fight them. I'm never scared when somebody picks Tomb Kings, but they're fine. When I play them, I always feel like I have options. I don't feel like I'm ever just screwed for picking Tomb Kings.
Yeah.
They're fine.
And they themselves have like, a lot of build variety you can do. Sort of like an Empire, they have a bit of a combined arms play style, but yeah, they're very, I don't want to say average, but yeah, they're kind of middle of the road.
I mean, they're fun, but I just don't think like I don't think there's an argument for them to be S tier. I don't think there's an argument for them to be D.
Hell no. Definitely not us, but yeah, they're not garbage.
Uh, LeNorm, I legitimately almost called you Kairos.
It's nice to know how you think of me. I'm just this little Australian bird, not that big bird.
All right.
Yeah, exactly. Like perfectly middle of the road faction. No reason to put them in any other tier but the middle of B. And I like how centrally they are in the screen right now.
All right. I'm gonna tee Lenorm up for Corn because timing wise, he's gonna land on High Elves, and actually, he should start that one. So, Corn, Lenorm, our resident Corn expert. Where does Corn land?
I have played Corn before, but I wouldn't put them higher than probably the top of C. They seem about where Chorfs are to me. They don't hit quite hard enough to do what you'd want Corn to do, and yeah, they have too many weaknesses to be in the middle of the pack. Like, look at those B tier and factions; they're basically all better than Corn at pretty much everything. Yeah, I'd put Corn C tier.
I would lower them in C a lot. Really good players like Berserk can try and convince me that they're better. And then I play Corn, and everything besides the Minotaurs and Valkia just makes me want to die. And it makes me so sad. But I actually, no, I will rescind a little bit of that. You guys have convinced me on the Skull Cannons. Skull Cannons are fine. They're fine. They're a good tool. I would put them low C, high D. Let's see where Booj says so we can figure this out. So Lenorm's high-ish C. I'm low C, high D. Where do you land? I swear to God, if you say A.
I would keep them in C, but I would put like 1 or 2 spaces between them and Chorfs. I wouldn't necessarily drop them to bottom of C. Um,
All right.
like, yeah,
All
or
right.
they need something because like all the buffs that their units have is just more melee attack. It's like, okay, that's good, but it gets to a point where like you need the weapon strength to kill fast, which you think Corn should get, and like they're not. Like they gotta take a good look at that faction and see like, all right, these guys should be crushing it in melee, and right now it's like
It's
the minnows do, but nothing else really is bringing that oomph that you want from corn.
all right. Booge, you're taking Kislev because
I
the
am
next two
taking Kislev.
the next two factions will make sense why I did that. So
Yeah.
Kislev, how do you feel?
I haven't played them post patch, but they're definitely out of S just because of how gutted the auction. Not gutted, like I still see them do like plenty of damage to lower armored stuff, which is fine because like Streltsy have a place on the roster again. That's kind of cool. You still get big nets from the ROR, which is great. Um, but yeah, like their more expensive Cav has always been very middling. Like I've never really gotten the value on it that I need. Armored Cossars are still solid, but I mean just with like everything on the roster basically being a hybrid, it's I don't know. I feel like it's a little hard to grade them for me with that factor in there. So it's
I'd
like,
put
oh,
them
they're
in.
a great shooting faction, but I don't know. I can't articulate it with Kislev. I can't.
I just think it's too hard to get a good balanced build as Kislev. They're good if you're building extreme builds, so it kind of makes them hard to prepare for. But a reasonable build that can deal with anything, I just think is pretty hard with Kislev. So, and for me, they seem weaker than Beastman, weaker than Empire. So I'd put them in B. But
Wow. Booge, are you of that opinion as well? B.
I don't have any evidence to support the contrary, so
All
yeah,
right.
let's go with that. But I definitely agree on like the you can't have a well-rounded build. You kind of have to sell out with like okay when Oxyno was still super OP, it was like okay the 12 range build or I'm gonna bear blob, and
E-
there's never really been like a middle ground that we've seen, and the stuff that we have it like I guess it can sometimes work, but nobody's like, oh, cool, you brought a couple winged lancers, and then you got Cossars on the flanks. It's like, I don't know. It's all kind of boring, and I don't think it works together well, like the faction and its units.
here's here's the hard part for me is I've been impressed by Kislev a lot recently on streams, and I want to put them in A. But as we're talking, I realize the people that are piloting them are Blood Penguin race, and I'm like, okay, would they have won anyway? Like, is Kislev that good, or are really good players playing Kislev? Uh, yeah, it's tough. I think you have to make Kislev A tier. You have to be really good at kite, and I don't know. Kite is not a very strong playstyle right now, and with the Oxyeno nerfs, yeah,
And their magic's still kind of trash.
their magic is kind of trash.
yeah, I was going to say give them Law of Life, and they'd be like A tier
No,
comfortably.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Law of Metal, maybe even that'd be good. You could bring those 12 range builds anyway.
All right, LeNorm. I haven't played against your high elves in a while, but I know you're pretty good at them. We're doing with high elves.
Yeah, I think you put them in almost the exact spot I'd put them in at the bottom of B. The thing is, their good builds just aren't fun and varied. As TBK is called these days, they just spearbox a lot, and it just gets a bit old. And bring Burning Head and all their Seaguard die. But yeah, I'd have them in B. They seem like they've got too many matchups where they just get ran over, and yeah, they can have a hard time dealing with the better factions. So of the S factions, the only one they have a good S and A right now, the only one they have a good matchup with is Dowie. Yeah, I don't think the Hales are in a great spot, but I think they're in a mid-tier spot.
Yeah, I just find the faction super boring and still getting carried by that Imric regrowth, and it's just like, yeah, everything else was just I don't know, vanilla ice cream, missionary sex, however you want to describe it. It's just you know what you're getting, not exciting, and there's chances are there's a counter to it in your build somewhere.
You know, I completely agree. High elves are the same they were last patch, but people have gotten a lot better at fighting high elves, and things have been added to the game that are really good at dealing with Imric specifically. High elves are still a good faction. They're still in B tier. They're just below Tomb Kings in our current rankings. So that sounds negative. We're talking about why they're not in A or S. They are definitely not a C tier faction. They are. I think they're pretty middle. They're fine. Not a bad faction at all. If the next patch didn't have buffs or nerfs for them, I wouldn't be upset. I'll take buffs or nerfs for them, but they're kind of in that position where you're like, okay, I could see it. Where you're kind of upset if none of the S tiers get nerfs, and you're kind of upset if the C tiers and D tiers don't get buffs. But high elves, I'm like, you're fine. You're doing okay. They'll
Yeah,
need buffs if regrowth gets nerfed.
They need some kind of change to make them more fun. They don't need to be better, as you're basically saying, but they need some of the units that aren't good to be good, and some of the units that are good to be slightly weaker. Would be my general feeling about high elves.
Yeah, I wouldn't go any lower with them because there's still something to be said about a faction that has every lore of Magic.
Yeah. All right. Now it's my turn. This is why we pushed Booj onto Kislev, is because I saw Skaven. This is my soapbox. Skaven are middle or bottom of C tier, and here's why before everybody hates me. Poison globes are overtuned. I've never pretended that they're not. I will say they are not as good versus everything as some people claim. They are just way broken overpowered versus cavalry for some reason. Then versus infantry and monstrous infantry and single entities, they're fine. Now, outside of that unit, this roster is in deep shit, and it's mostly because of the meta. You can point at the unit's stats and be like, wow, this and this unit are great. This and this unit are great. They are great. I agree. What is this faction's weaknesses? Healing single entities, chariots, and leadership. Huh, what are three things prominent in the Game 3 meta? Wild ass changes in leadership, sometimes causing units to break, and then while they're breaking, immediately spike back up to like 40 fucking leadership. Chariots just got fixed. And oh, a healing meta? Or have we been in a healing meta? Did I hear healing meta? So the Skaven, their roster isn't bad, but all of their weaknesses are the meta right now, and they're struggling so fucking hard. They have some good matchups. They're a good counterpick faction right now, but a lot of the matchups are really bad for them right now, which is why I put them in C tier. It's like, yeah, if you get a counter pick and you pick Skaven into one of their good matchups, they feel totally fine, but a tier list is about their general performance, and their general performance is they're weak to like 15 of the 24 factions. So that's...
I think Skaven are in the same place as High Elves and Greenskins at the bottom of B tier. I think they have some good matchups, some bad matchups, but they normally lose in the same way, basically. I don't think they're the bottom of C tier at all. I think they're completely different to Khorne.
That's fair. That's fair. Booj, how you feeling?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep them in the dumpster, probably low C, if not top of D. Just because again, like on paper, they have stuff that they need, and then you get into a game, and it's like, oh, these Rattling guns are jank, and they're not killing what I need. It's like, oh, the warp fires are shooting over the thing that I needed to kill. It's like we never see plague claw catapults or any of the fun stuff, but like there's a reason it's not brought, and just it all gets countered so hard.
Yeah, I just think Strat has it right. It's a bit like High Elves. Bring a really boring army. Bring like 4 globes, 4 rat ogres, Flensing Ruin, and a hero squad, and then you're gonna deal with basically everything. If your globes don't get overrun at the very beginning or kited.
We have 2 people saying C or even D, and then 1 person saying B. I'll compromise and say middle of C rather than bottom of C. But it is a very divisive faction. I know there are lots of people like LeNorm, like Blood Penguin. There are a lot of people in our new player tournaments that absolutely hate Skaven, and I get it. It's one of those factions where You could make an argument for A tier and not be completely insane, and you could make an argument for C tier and not be completely insane. Um, they're just they're in a weird spot right now where sometimes they look great and sometimes they're awful. And I am a filthy biased Skaven main, and my faction sucks and it needs buffs. Not really. My actual take has always been the meta needs to change and then the Skaven will be fine. But that's a longer conversation for a different video.
I feel like you're a streamer who kind of has to bring fun Skaven builds rather than the same build every time. But yeah, I think if you play them boring, that they're strong.
That's fair.
But anyway, yeah.
Norska, do I have to make room in B tier or are they up in A? Booj, do you play Nurgle these days?
Do I play Nurgle these days? Not very recently, no. Not like, not. I mean, I'm not picking them in a comp setting ever.
Okay, then you take Norska. Nurgle was next, and I was like, wait, does Booj play that? All right,
No.
Norska, where are they?
Oh man, another faction that I don't play a ton of. Yeah, my matchup experience with them is like super limited because it's like them, Skaven, and Wood Elves. I think are like my three least played factions across games 2 and 3 that I've been involved in. I think they've got good matchups, but the ones that aren't so good are like really bad for them. I never gave you a tier actually. I just now realized that.
You did not give
I
me
would
a
leave
tier.
them in like bottom of B or maybe right next to Chorfs and C.
Wow.
It's mostly speaking from lack of experience.
Fair.
It's like it's never like, oh, I'm gonna pick Norska today. It's like, yeah, I could just pick another faction that does all that stuff but better.
All right. Color me surprised. LeNorm, are you on that
No,
general
I'd put them
trend?
in B tier. They have like a few units that are really strong and hard to deal with for a lot of matchups. I think they can get a bit stuck and they can lose momentum a bit, but then they can also just sit there and regen for 20 minutes and have some heal cap skin walls. So yeah, I'd have had them at the bottom of B tier. They feel like greenskins to me. They're in a good place as a counter pick. If you pick them first, you're probably in for a hard time.
Wow. I okay. All right. You guys have actually convinced me a bit. I would have thought A, just because of how much I see them in tournaments, but popularity is not necessarily strength. And you have a point. They have like 3 good units, and they spam them, and you know they're coming. I think I just played too much with Blood Penguin. Nurgle. I'll take the lead on this one. Bottom of D tier, worst faction in the game. All right, Ogre Kingdoms. Ogre Kingdoms.
Wait, do you really think Nurgle are the worst faction in the game?
No, I think Demons of Chaos and Slaanesh are worse, but Cool Umbrella and I wildly disagree on this faction. I think Nurgle is very easy to defeat. Uh, I don't know, just bring archers. Their whole faction's countered by archers, Fate of Buna, and Spirit Leech. You're gonna be okay. I think Nurgle's just got nothing. They've got no
Yeah, but
killing
then
power.
you get caught off guard with that armor push, man.
And
Yeah.
Kugaf and Mass Mobility can deal with the archers, and then Kugaf can kill everything else.
Yeah, streams of corruptions, a soul grinder, or yeah,
I
just
would have put them top of C. I think they're better than Khorne. I think heal capping Chaos Knights is always strong. Or not always strong. It's strong since Chaos Knights were good. And they can do that with ease. Again, this is speaking as someone who plays High Elves a lot, so maybe it's just that that's a unit we're weak to, but I'd have put them in C tier at least.
All right, so just so I know your position, when you say top of C, do you mean above Chorfs or in this gap we left?
Yeah, I think they have more good matchups than Chorfs.
Okay, so we have above Chorfs. I put them in D, only above Slaanesh and Demons of Chaos, not to get too ahead of us here. Booj, what are you thinking?
um I'm inclined to go more towards Norm on this one. I think that when you think Nurgle to a lot of people, it is just like, oh, you're gonna blob with Kugath and maybe you're gonna take Uncle for Uncle too, and it'll just be a great time sitting there and doing nothing. But like again, like the Chaos Knights come out, you get the fucking armor push coming out, and like it can catch people. Even the Exalted Plague Bearers, some factions, they have a hard time clearing them.
All right.
I mean, they have some variety, but yeah, definitely not enough to get them any higher, I don't think.
Okay. I'll take the L. I'll take the L.
I don't
Oh,
think anyone's going to complain too much about C tier and D tier being a bit muddled, but
that's
you know.
fair. Ogres. Ogres, ogres. Anyone wanna take this one? I literally haven't played ogres since the update. I've spectated a lot of games, but I haven't played them.
I'm happy with all the nerfs they got as a former very much ogre hater. Um, I would I would put them above Norska in B. I would definitely not put them in A.
See, I would put them in A and definitely not put them in B. I think they got the cost nerfs, which make them harder to build, but when you're playing against them, they still feel pretty similar to when they were, to me, they were an S tier faction last pack to me, and I think the nerfs have pushed them to A. Progut still heals so much. You'll kill the Sky Striders like 7 times, and they're still there fighting with 12 models and full HP, and wonder why. But maybe I just don't get ogres very much.
I have. I'm gonna put them at the bottom of A. I still watching replays see Noblar trappers. They I feel like they've had every cost increase in the book thrown at them, and they still get like their value or they'll double it. So those guys are still kind of insane. I haven't seen Crushers in a long time, but Iron Guts post nerfs are still really solid units. Ogre Bulls are still well worth their cost. The Slaughtermaster's still pretty good. Uh, the biggest thing for me that's keeping them A. My gut tells me B, but looking at every faction in B, I think ogres are slightly better than them. So then it's like it's just semantics whether they're A or B. But I think they're better than all those other ones from what I've spectated. I have not played them since the nerfs. Since the nerfs, but the Gorgers got buffs. Been casting a lot of replays of people trying out the Gorgers. The Gorgers still kind of suck, but they're better, but they still suck. But Noble Trapper is still really good. Ogre Bull's still really good. Stonehorn's still really, really good. And is the healing single entity meta, which they can still do. They took a severe hit. So I think no matter where you place them, everyone would agree that they fell from grace. And we're still trying to figure out how big that fall is. But for now, let's do bottom of A. B is getting a little too full, a little too samey. Can't always say B all the time.
And the thing with trappers that I think people underappreciate is pseudo range units which become hidden when they route, basically, are really annoying. Like you kill them and they disappear and like, oh great, I got rid of the trappers, and then they just surround you and throw at your back for no obvious reason. Anyway, that's my pet peeve with them. They're a bit like Ungol Raiders. They just keep coming back, and you don't really realize it until they're throwing javelins from a mile or from quite close, but from just being invisible.
All right. I'm going to throw this next one to Booj, then Coast to me, and then we have LeNorm's iconic faction.
Oh,
All right, Booj, channel
E tier.
your inner coops. D tier?
E tier.
All right, LeNorm, do you agree?
Yeah, they're just such a disappointing faction. Every time I play them, I'm like, I'm gonna have fun. I'm gonna bring these really great mobile elements and surround my opponent, and then it's just a box that you play against,
Yeah.
and your mobile things just are useless because of that. And you sit there for like 5-10 minutes, and then you just want to quit, even if you're still in the game.
I completely agree. I don't think we need to beat a dead horse here. The reasons are pretty obvious. They got gutted into the ground. They're lacking a real identity. And while a contrarian or two is going to pop up and say, I won a game on Slanesh, when you're talking about versus all 24 factions, they're good into like 3. And that's just not a C tier faction. That's not a B tier faction. That's a D tier faction.
Conceptually, they have a very rewarding play style. and then you get into the game, and it's like, oh, their best unit is the slow armored boys.
Ah, yeah. On to my recent second favorite faction behind the Skaven, Vampire Coast. I got shit for this last tier list. I'm ready to get shit for this again. I think Coasts are an A tier. I think Coast are pretty darn good after the handgunner buffs of. Was that 4.0? I think that was 4.0. Bombers got nerfed, but they're still pretty good. You have access to death and vampire magic, which is all you need. And then if you want to cheese somebody, you have the deeps. So you have 3 decent lores of magic or good lores of magic. You actually have decent lord selection outside of Noctilus. Everyone takes Noctilus, but Slostra has some uses, and then the generic Caster Lord is actually pretty good. You have pretty bad mobility, but you have good monstrous infantry, good shooting. You're undead, so it's hard to be bad. And I don't know. I think the Coast have a lot more teeth than people give them credit for. I would put them below dwarves and above ogres. I will now open the floors to how I am wrong. I acknowledge archers counter them. I know that, but still, I think their
Ah,
strengths outweigh it.
but mortars counter archers. You mean?
Yeah. So you get it. Um,
I play Vampire Coast, I feel like they're C tier, and when I play against them, I feel like they're A tier. Um, I don't quite get them, but I think that I could see someone putting them in A tier and not being a lunatic. I'd have put them in B tier, but I put most things in B tier. I think I'm realizing the more we go through this list.
all right,
Yeah,
Boosh.
solid A for me. The gun buff certainly helped. Any unbreakable front line is always going to be good. The crabs are still super potent. Yeah, they're just solid.
All right. Teeing us off onto the exciting topic, I'm going to make this caveat right now. In quick battles, where Kairos Fate Weaver is running around doing his thing, probably S tier. Don't see much of a point about that. So if you're just here for quick battle tier list, put him in S tier. That's fine. But for our interests, on my content, there Kairos is banned, and in the Vermin League, Kairos is banned. So let's discuss Zinch sans Kairos. Without Kairos, where do they end up? LeNorm?
So I want to re-emphasize your caveat with Kairos. They're S tier. I think they're the best faction in the game. Without Kairos, bottom of A, maybe top of B. They seem like lots of the playstyles that Kairos really led. Um, you lose any margin for error without regrowth. And that was what made them so strong for me. The possibility that you just play like an asshole for 20 minutes and your opponent kind of rage quits when they lose. But without Kairos, they seem to me like a weaker Warriors of Chaos in a lot of matchups. Like, I was thinking about what do they have that Warriors of Chaos don't have? And they have Horrors, Flamers, and the Soul Grinder. That's basically the units you could see in a game, and you'll see Horrors and a Soul Grinder a lot. And I think that makes them weaker than Warriors of Chaos to me, and I'd have had Warriors of Chaos at the bottom of A tier. Be like someone who plays a lot of Zinch and now is a bit frustrated at them as a faction, doesn't quite know what to do, thinking they're weaker than they are. But without Kairos, their Lord choices are pretty meh, and and their single entities and heavy cav just got a lot weaker.
Don't
I,
worry, another fellow Zinchman in here coming to huff the copium with you. I would definitely say top of B. They got again without Kairos, it's pretty tricky because like we did for like Empire Beastmen, if we're like assessing it from the perspective of an average player, like definitely B tier. I think like Nor mentioned the margin of error, but just like the skill ceiling too is also incredibly high on them. So you could still probably make a case that without Kairos they're in A. Um, but for the average player, I think Zinch is gonna struggle and do a lot of stuff. Like they still don't have a super reliable way to clear armor, especially with the blue fire not being able to just decimate infantry like it used to.
mhm.
So I would go top of B with them.
I feel like
My
they're.
categories too. I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah. I feel Zinch is above Coast and Ogres. I think they're right around Dwarves. Um, maybe I just watch too many like super high level players like LeNorm play them and still make them look pretty good. And it's not like Coast and Dwarves and Ogres are unbeatable, right? And I'm not saying they're as good as Dark Elves. It is in this nuanced state. But without Kairos is a huge loss. I think Tzeentch Chaos Knights are good without regrowth. I see them a lot on the Warriors of Chaos roster. Like people will spend their marks on Tzeentch Knights, and they always perform pretty well. Um, so I'm still a little fearful of those guys. The Soul Grinder of Tzeentch still gives me nightmares. Screamers of Tzeentch are an incredible unit, but while I love horrors, I don't think horrors are amazing. They're fine, and after that, your roster drops off pretty hard. Um, I would leave them at bottom of A, just because of that still high level play of Soul Grinder Kite. While it is much weaker without Kairos, it's like I still think Tzeentch is better than Beastman, Empire, Kislev, um, but I could be convinced that they're worse than ogres right now. So I think bottom of A is the lowest I'd be willing to put Tzeentch. And also our B tier is just completely fucking full.
And I think it would be a really bad thing for the Vermin League if we have global bans, but Tzeentch wasn't one of the options. Like if I queue and Alfred queues into me and like he plays Tzeentch, I would say that would be an A tier faction, like pretty clearly. Um, and even if most players they would be a B or maybe even a C tier faction, I think the possibility of them being so strong should keep them in A.
All right.
Uh, Finally, an easy S tier.
Easy S tier. So we can line this up so Booj gets Wood Elves. Let's have Booj take Demons of Chaos. No. I'm kidding. Uh, all right. Demons of Chaos. I put them as the worst faction in the game. It is entirely because of the demonic instability passive, and every single unit they have has it. It not to go on a whole tirade, but just stating facts, whether you like domination or not. In land battles, which this tier list is for, I should have mentioned that, but if you're on this channel, you should know that by now. In land battles, demonic instability is a bad thing. In domination, it's a good thing. So this whole roster is paying a premium for a bad trait. And once you fall below a certain leadership point, your unit just dies. So you can summon it again. Summon it again, but this is a game mode that doesn't have resummoning. So your whole army is just too expensive, cost inefficient, and dies immediately. It's pretty bad. It's a pretty bad faction in land battles right now. Was anything I said incorrect?
No.
All right.
Yeah, you're right. Like I think they're pretty poor into every S tier and A tier faction, and most of the B tiers, and maybe even some of the C tiers. So I think it's hard to find factions they're actually good into. Like I know you hover over Skaven then with your mouse, so they're fine into Skaven, but it's not like an auto win.
Yeah, Be'lakor is fine into Skaven. The Demons of Chaos are pretty meh, but they happen to have him.
And then Nurgle Lord is also very strong, I think. But anyway.
Yeah, but versus Skaven specifically, it's like, man, if this roster didn't have Be'lakor, they would also be bad into Skaven. All right. Vampire Counts are very interested. Very interested. LeNorm, you play a good amount of them. Why don't you kick us off here?
Yeah, for me, they're B tier.
All right.
Sorry.
Where do
I
they...
don't want to listen to the Spitfire story now. It is my favourite, but we'll listen to it later. Sorry.
You're fine. Where do they land in here?
They're below Empire and above Kislev. I would have put them to be specific. I think they've got quite a few good matchups. I think if you play them really well, like Tzeentch, but not quite as intensely, then they're going to be strong. But but they do have quite a few weaknesses, and it's like a limited roster as ever. It's a good matchup for demons.
I like that a lot. I would put the bottom of B, top of C personally. After the healing nerfs to them in a previous patch, they have not scared me quite as they used to. I really haven't felt that bad about them. A good player can still win on them, but I feel like most factions can deal with it. But this is a decent spot to put them. I think it's pretty reasonable. Booj?
Yeah, I think they require really patient play. to make them shine, and like having a really good understanding of the role of all of your units. Um, I don't know if I'd put him over Kislev, but I'd definitely leave him in B.
I'm also kind of on that train. I think Kislev is getting a little underrated here. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this, but otherwise I agree. I think they're better than Tomb Kings, and I think that does give me some perspective where it's like, oh, okay. I might say top of C, but then if you ask me if they're better than Tomb Kings, I would say yes. So
And CA have messed up a lot of things and taking a long time to do lots of things, but I think they've finally got the undead factions in a good state.
that I would agree with. I enjoy fighting all three undead factions, and I enjoy playing as two of them right now. I enjoy the Coast and the Tomb Kings. Vampire Counts have just never really been my speed, but like I said, I don't mind fighting them, which is new. All right, Booj can start us off on Chaos. I'll start us off on Wood Elves, and we'll call it a video. Booj, Chaos. Where are we going?
Chaos. Well, it was kind of alluded to earlier. Um, I'd have him in A. Maybe not bottom of A. I think I'd have him above Zinch, just because they can bring most of the stuff Zinch can, barring like the Soul Grinder and Horrors. Um, you can still take Zinch Knights, which are pretty effective. You can take the Mutilith, and you can take it on walk, so you can heal it again. I mean, without regrowth, but healing is healing at the end of the day. And the roster is just so goddamn bloated. You really have no idea what you're preparing for a lot of the time. Like, are you gonna box with hell cannons, which are now buffed and are actually doing pretty solid work in the lore bits that I've used them? Or are you gonna get rushed with, Chaos Knights and some skirmish cav and maybe a couple Manticores flying overhead? Or is it just gonna be like a chosen push? Um, so just with the amount of stuff that they have, I think it's a solid A.
All right. I definitely agree that they're an A. I think the placement is pretty good. My placement for them would be one spot up, but that's about our fundal. That's our disagreement about where the ogres should have been at all, right? So of course I think that they should be above ogres because I thought ogres would be lower. But like, definitely think they're above Zinch. I think they're below Coast, so right in there is where I would put them. And yeah, let's get on with the last one. This one's spicy, man. I have been playing a lot of Wood Elves recently. I've been enjoying them recently. I still don't think they're A tier. I don't even think they're B tier, but I think they're in the C conversation. I think they're above Korn and Skaven, but then like even just saying that out loud, I'm like, well, okay, well, they're worse than Skaven, but I feel wrong putting them at the bottom of C tier because they have been doing well recently, but I can't put them above Skaven. Not just out of pride, but I mean like even as much as I dog on Skaven, I'm still like, okay, the Skaven are in a better spot than the Wood Elves. Come on. So I don't know. I'm really conflicted. I guess
Maybe
like
put even Wood Elves above Chaos Dwarfs and Khorne, and your list won't look crazy to me.
yeah, yeah. I think the C tier is all pretty close and pretty interchangeable, but I think they're all definitively not B, and I think that does land the Wood Elves in C. And they are like for I guess for me that is the deal breaker is they're worse than Skaven. They're not D, so they're there. That's just where they are, and by process of elimination, and it feels bad to put them there. But that's where they are.
They just have so many bad matchups. Like, look at the S tier and the A tier, and how many of those factions would you say, like, yep, I'd be confident playing Wood Elves into them? Maybe Ogres, if you're a good Wood Elf player. Maybe, Coast as well, I guess. But the rest of them, it just wouldn't be fun for a Wood Elf player to play against good factions, even if they're good against lots of these weaker factions. That doesn't really matter.
yeah. Oh, they're fun. They're fun. They're just so limited right now.
I think there's a bit of like a placebo effect going on here among some of the Wood Elf enjoyers because they're like, "Oh, Arrow Kurnos is back." Like that's good now. It's like, I mean, sure, but I think the issue was like nobody was just playing them before, and that slight buff to Arrow of Kurnos was just enough to spurn people into playing them more, experimenting with them, trying them out. That being said, think they still have a lot of bad matchups, but I do believe they have at least crawled out of dumpster tier.
Yeah.
I agree. They're not dumpster.
Here's the caveat I will say at the very end of the video. The more we talk about this, I feel like this tier list isn't correct. And what I mean by that is using the tier list format doesn't feel applicable. I feel like A, B, and C are all legit, and then I think S should be empty, and S plus should exist. And I think D should be empty, and F should exist. Because Slanesh and Demons of Chaos feel way worse than Wood Elves, but Nurgle doesn't feel way worse than Norska. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And, like, Dark Elves feel way worse than Lizardmen, but, like, not bad. But, like, that's what I mean. I feel like this patch specifically, S and D are way more separate, and the center is super close.
But we're also doing this at the start of 4.1, rough kind of. And maybe in a month or so, when it's Christmas time and 4.2 comes out, or even whatever that DLC that won't come out for a long time comes out when they said it would, then I could see us doing a very different list. But right now, that seems right to me. That D-lit factions are just not worth bringing. They don't even have good matchups other than like one or two, and the S1s I kind of wish weren't there.
All right. Well said. Booj, we both gave our parting thoughts. Any wisdom you would like to impart before we shut her down?
I'm gonna say the list looks fine. Otherwise, there was absolutely no point to doing this. No, in all seriousness, it is hard to compartmentalize it into 5 tiers here when there's I don't know the math, but it's 24 factions with 24 different potential matches. It's like what 276 or something ridiculous. Like it's a lot to consider. But I do think it looks fine. Having played the game in 4.1 now for a bit of time, I'm actually liking what I'm seeing. I think the patch overall has been decent. There's still some things that need to be tweaked, but yeah, maybe this all just gets inverted come next year. Like, who's to say?
Roar! Subscribe, yes, yes.